So the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, promises to increase UK defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030, saying this will put the UK arms industry on a war footing.
Defence Secretary Kevan Jones, he spoke to GB News a little earlier.
The world, as we've been saying, as I was saying back in my speech in January, is looking more dangerous. I think it's very important for Britain to play its leadership part. The Prime Minister has stepped up and has done that in a very significant way. And I think this is very, very good news for the United Kingdom, our security, and also for our leadership in the rest of the world.
Well, let's cross over now to Westminster to join GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. Good morning, Chris. Good morning. So a big announcement today from the Conservatives. Our inbox of viewers obviously saying, well, does it really matter? Because Rishi Sunak won't be Prime Minister by 2030.
Well, it does matter. It shows the direction of travel. This money is paid for. It's covered by the cost by cutting some 10,000 civil service posts, some of those in the Ministry of Defence. It shows a political will to ensure this country is put on a war footing. It goes beyond where Labour is. Labour is saying they want to get to 2.5% of GDP. That's the government target too, but won't say how they'll get there or whether they can get there just yet. They're having a spending review if they win power in the November general election. So it does two things. It gives the Tory party a dividing line on defence with the Labour Party going into the long election campaign. It also, I think, secures to some degree Mr Sunak's position with his own backbenchers. I've been talking to a senior defence backbencher, MP with defence interests on the backbench of the Tory party. He says, you know, it's priced in the Tories will do not so well in next week's local elections and maybe even the mayoral elections. But this spending on defence is exactly what the right of the party wanted to see happen and has now happened. So in a sense, Mr Sunak politically, he wouldn't want to admit this, is getting ahead of what could be a difficult weekend in eight days' time and the following days after that, when some have forecast yet another challenge to his authority from the backbenches. So it is quite good politics. It's also very good for this country if you do believe the concerns that the government has about the so-called this axis opposing the UK, Russia, China and Iran. Then what is announced here is getting ahead of that and leading the way to other NATO countries to match 2.5% of GDP on defence spending, not just 2%.
All right, Chris, that's Chris Hope, who is our political editor in Westminster. We're going to talk now to Kevan Jones, who's the Labour MP for North Durham and, of course, was a Defence Minister in Gordon Brown's government. Kevan, morning to you.
Good morning.
As a man who's got his finger on the pulse on defence issues, is this good news?
No, it's what we've come to expect from Kevan Jones. More spin and bull, frankly. The defence, they said they're putting the nation on a war footing. Defence expenditure next year goes down if you take out the 500 million that is dedicated for Ukraine. And that was confirmed by the finance director who sat next to the Secretary of State at the Defence Select Committee a few weeks ago.
So they're talking, aren't they, Kevan, about massive increase in armaments and ammunition to replace the stuff that's being sent to Ukraine. But on paper, it's a huge increase.
Andrew, it's for the birds, this. If backbench Tory MPs have swallowed this one, they're very gullible because it's just spin. If you look, for example, next year, it is a fact, the defence budget declines. If we're on a war footing, why are you cutting the defence budget next year? And as for the 75 billion, it's absolute nonsense. It's not 75 billion, it's just spin. If you look at the IFS's figures this morning, you only get to 75 billion if you actually freeze the defence budget over the next 6 years. So there's no extra money. And I think the other thing you need to look at is that the defence budget is still 7% lower than it was in 2010. That's because the Tories took 14% out of the defence budget up until 2016. Sacked people, made people compulsory redundant, the point is that this is just complete spin, and it's for political purposes, internal management of the Tory party, rather than helping our armed forces.
Who are we on a war footing with, by the way? Because that's what he says. This will put us on a war footing. What war can we fight with the army at its lowest level since the Napoleonic conflicts?
Well, we can't, and this is the nonsense that they're portraying. Is you don't go on a war footing if you're going to cut the defence. And the idea that you're going to balance the budget by cutting 10,000 civil servants. What people got to remember: these aren't pen pushers in Whitehall. These are the technicians, scientists, and others that actually develop and support defence equipment. So good luck with that if you actually want to get procurement sorted out.
So would you keep the civil servants, do you think, Kevan? Will Labour keep such a bloated blob running the country?
It's all right to make bloated blob, but look at what they do. Civil servants in the MOD are arms specialists. They are scientists they are the people that do, for example, nuclear engineers on replacing the nuclear deterrent. Now, if you want to get rid of some of them, fine, but that's all you'll do is actually gum up the procurement system. I'm all for efficiency wherever you can make it, but this is just complete nonsense that you can actually balance the defence budget by cutting civil servants.
But don't we need to boot out some of those involved in defence procurement, Kevan? Because when you were a defence minister, there was a problem with procurement. It's continuing now under this government. The big defence projects are always massively overspent, always behind schedule. We've got aircraft carriers which don't seem to be able to work. Sorry,
Andrew, I don't like I told you so, but the reason why our defence procurement is such a mess is something called the Levine Review and changes in the early 2012, which actually devolved the budgets to the mainline forces, took the eye off the ball in terms of control over this, and made sure that decisions weren't taken at a strategic level. That's what's actually happened and that's on the Conservative Party's watch. I'm sorry, this is just spin. And I think people just look at the figures and actually, face down Sunak and Shapps and just say to them, well, come on, where are you going to get this money from?
It does feel a little like Rishi Sunak is just throwing everything he's got at this now in this sort of final run-up to an election to see what sticks. Our inbox shows that most people out there, the viewers, are a lot smarter than that and they can see through some of the electioneering. What could make any difference for him, Kevan, and when do you think that election might be?
Well, it's not for me to say the Prime Minister. I think it's a big enough hole as it is. But if I was him, I wouldn't keep digging and bringing a JCB in and trying to, think that the public are stupid. And, some of us who are committed to defence and actually want to see our armed forces properly funded are not going to be conned by this announcement. People just look at this Conservative Party's record on defence. They've cut defence over the last 14 years. They're cutting it next year even. And if we're on a war footing, that's not what you do.
When do you want the election?
Sorry?
When do you want the election?
I want it as soon as possible because, frankly, if this was a horse, you'd put it out of his misery, this government.
Can we just ask you, Kevan, can we trust your lot on defence?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, the situation is... Andrew, you've known me a long time on defence and... even in the bad years of Corbyn, I was still holding the flag there for defence. We've got Keir Starmer, who's committed to defence, and John Healey, who I think is someone else who is committed to making sure that we make the right decisions for this country, not the cheap spin and playing politics with what's happened over the last few days.
Can we just ask you about these scenes yesterday on St George's Day in London, with the police being very heavy-handed, jumping out of vans ready to riot? Did it look like this two-tier policing that the Met are being accused of? Because we have pro-Palestinian, pro-peace, you might say, rallies every weekend, and there is never that sort of muscular response.
No, listen, one of the great things about our country is democracy. We have freedom of speech to demonstrate and actually ensure that we can, have our right to say. That needs protecting. That's something precious. That's what we fight for in this country in democracy. The police have a difficult job in terms of ensuring that. And if demonstrations take place that turn violent, then the police have to make the appropriate response. If you see some of the individuals who were behind yesterday's St George's Day, were they looking for trouble? Possibly they were. But demonstrations should be something we should actually cherish and think it's part of our freedom of democracy. It should always be done peacefully. And we should all support the police in terms of the difficult job they've got.
OK.
All right, Kevan, great to talk to you again. That's Kevan Jones. He's the Labour MP for North Durham and a former Defence Minister. Great to talk to you.